You have never actually seen the world around you. Your brain, the organ responsible for your conscious experience, is sealed inside a pitch-black vault. It receives no light, no sound, and no physical touch, only a chaotic storm of electrical spikes. Because it has no direct access to the outside environment, your brain has to guess what is causing those electrical signals. What you experience right now as sight is an internal simulation, anchored by the data coming in through your eyes. When you look across the room at a friend or family member, you are not looking at a photograph of their face. Instead, your mind is taking millions of meaningless sensory impulses and rendering an image of them in real time. Everything you perceive, the colors, the depth, the faces of the people you know best, is a biological projection. You live your entire life inside this sealed simulation, isolated from the true physical universe. The hardware running this massive simulation is the neocortex, a wrinkled outer layer of tissue that makes up about 70% of the space inside your skull. If you were to look closely at the neocortex, you would find a repeating structure. It contains roughly 150,000 distinct microscopic processing units known as cortical columns. These tiny columns do not know what a face or a human is. They operate by mapping incoming sensory data onto rigid geometric reference frames, plotting electrical spikes onto a 3D coordinate system to predict what you will encounter next. Our deepest emotional bonds rely entirely on this cold, mathematical machinery. Your ability to recognize your own child is the result of thousands of microscopic columns successfully matching geometric data points in the dark. We can see how fragile this rendering engine is by observing what happens when the visual cortex physically disconnects from the brain's emotional centers. Neurologists have documented a rare condition known as Capgras syndrome. Patients with this affliction can process the physical geometry of a family member's face, but their limbic system, the area of the brain that produces emotions, fails to fire. They feel zero emotional response. Faced with a perfect visual match, but a total void of feeling, the brain must reconcile the sensory mismatch. If the face looks right, but the feeling is gone, it logically concludes that the person standing right there cannot be their actual loved one, only an exact, soulless duplicate. Emotional connection is a physical, biological data stream. Cut that single electrical feed, and the person you have known your entire life instantly registers as a stranger. Sometimes the failure happens deeper in the hardware. The geometric prediction engine itself can break down, leaving a person unable to assemble individual visual features into a coherent whole. The late neurologist Oliver Sacks spent his career documenting these types of severe hardware failures in a condition known as visual agnosia. Sacks treated a patient whose brain completely lost the ability to access the geometric reference frame for a human face. The man could see a nose, even an ear, or a mustache, but his neocortex could no longer compile those shapes into the concept of a person. At the end of a routine consultation, the patient stood up, reached over to his wife, and grabbed her head. He was genuinely trying to lift it off and place it on his own head, having entirely mistaken his spouse for a hat. Our recognition of the human form requires a constant, active algorithmic assembly. When that algorithm fails, a living, breathing spouse shatter into a collection of inanimate objects. Dr. Sacks viewed these conditions through a romantic lens. He saw his patients as individuals struggling to maintain their identity, fighting to keep an essential human soul intact when their biology failed them. But modern neuroscience offers a colder framework. Researchers like Jeff Hawkins, architect of the 1,000 brains theory, argue that there is no distinct human soul hiding in the circuitry. The brain is an indifferent machine. Hawkins proposes that the brain acts like a supercomputer built to forecast the weather. It rapidly generates models of incoming sensory data, constantly updating its predictions to minimize errors and avoid surprises, operating entirely without an inherent understanding of meaning. We are left caught between two realities. Either your identity is the expression of a unique soul, or you are the byproduct of an organic computer, functioning exactly as it was programmed. We spend our lives trusting the stability of our vision and the depth of our emotional bonds. We assume the world we see is exactly the world that exists, but underneath every smile and every familiar glance, your brain is quietly running 150,000 isolated models, plotting data points on a grid, constantly fracturing and reassembling the geometry of reality. The next time you sit across from a family member, consider the biological mechanics at work. There is no light connecting you, only a blind guessing game playing out inside your skull. The people you love most are ultimately data, constructed and maintained inside the dark, lonely vault of your mind.